Hi everyone, this is Kyle Marshall, aka Againstime from grinderschool.com. Today I'll be doing a live video for you on Ultimate Poker. I've already got a couple games going here. For those of you unfamiliar with the structure, it's very similar to Poker Stars, 50, 30, 20 payouts to top 3. It is 7-handed instead of 9-handed, which lowers the variance, and it skips the first blind level. But overall I do like the structure, but it's very similar, so most of you should be pretty comfortable. Here, 8 blinds from the hijack. 10-8 offsuit is actually not a bad shove. 10-9 I probably would have gone for. I was slightly concerned about the presence of this short stack and the increased likelihood of him getting involved. The presence of the blinds going through us and only being 5-handed here, though, it's super borderline. Depending on how I felt, I could have gone either way with it. This is close as well. We're not quite getting 2-1 here. This player I haven't seen a lot of action from. I'm going to let it go. Probably hands I would have called with here, just slightly better than I had. Maybe ace-10. Not that I necessarily think ace-10 is good, but I was getting fairly good odds there. I probably would have called with something like ace-9 suited, ace-10, pocket sixes, maybe king-queen, something like that to give you an idea. Against this player, it would be a different range depending on the player. Here we're going to make a steal from the hijack. This is fairly loose. Don't really want this player to shove, but if he does, we have to call, but hoping to just steal this one. Now, this is a raise you would not make in an earlier blind level profitably. Maybe in the 25-50 would be the earliest. Here, we'd shove almost any 2 here. Getting 3-bet with king-9, smartest way is just to let it go. Never want to flat call that. You're always 4-bet shoving or folding there, and king-9 is not good enough to get involved. This player should be calling us fairly wide here, but even so, I mean, if you get a face card at 7 blinds and blind versus blind, you have to shove. Don't know what the hesitation is with the 7s, but this is an easy shove and an easy fold, both ways in my opinion. You should be calling, just to give you an idea, in this player's position, against a player who's shoving appropriately wide like myself, for 6 or 7 blinds, you should be calling with any pair, any ace, any suited king, maybe any offsuit king. It's close. Maybe like a queen 5 suited, queen 8 offsuit, extremely wide. Jack like 7, jack 8 suited, jack 9 offsuit, like all of that. It should be an insta call. There should be no hesitation whatsoever. The only exception would be is if you're close to equal chips with the player shoving into you, and a call and a loss would eliminate you, or essentially lose all of your equity in the tournament. That would be the only time you would fold, even though just the bottom of that. But with this player's chip position, they should have been calling extremely fast with all those hands. Here we'll just shove with the ace-queen over the limp. No, you shouldn't be limping with any hands with 10 or 11 blinds. Sometimes players will trap you with aces or kings or queens there. I actually found that on the other side of us, but still, you would shove over this limp all day with ace-queen. It's always nice for the player behind you to wake up with a big hand, of course. This is kind of an awkward spot. I'm inclined to just fold it and look for a better position. King 10 is obviously a shove. Queen 8 here, you can call or fold. I'm going to call, and we'll fold the ace 6. Yeah, this spot with the 8-5 that I had, it was tough. I wasn't really sure if I was ahead or behind. I felt that I was behind, and apparently I was behind both players actually, but it's a super close call here. Against a really loose player, you could get involved there. The player behind you should make you more inclined to fold, though. King 10 here, easy shove. Got called by ace-7, which is a good call. Should have other games loading up here. Look like we're in pretty good chip position in the other 3. Here we'll just fold the queen jack. This is this flat call is pretty bad. The reason why this flat call is bad is if a player behind him shoves, he's essentially committed to call with this hand. if he was willing to call this shove, he should have just ISO shoved over the top. That's a common mistake I see among beginning or intermediate players is flat calling like 5 to 6 blind shoves when you only have 15 blinds or less left yourself. As soon as you call that, you've committed your stack to the pot at the end, and calling that and folding is a really awful mistake. Similarly, this over 3x raise is also a mistake. This player, you can tell, is not a strong player, seeing so many obvious mistakes close together like that. This is an easy shove with the ace-8 all day long. This will just shove. I normally like to just make a small raise, but we don't want to make a raise and have this player shove on us on the bubble. So we'll just get it all in. This is an excellent re-steal spot with 18 blinds, super standard here, and this is an excellent hand to do it with. I could get called with a stronger hand here, but if you're not re-stealing with King Jack suited for 18 blinds against a cutoff raise, then you're just not re-stealing. Other hands that you should consider coming, this we call based on pot odds, call any two here. Other hands we would consider re-stealing with that 18 blind stack size it's a pretty good optimization of risk to reward ratio, and well, that's it really. You're not really risking too much to win what's in the middle, but you have really good fold equity. Any suited Broadway hand there would be a standard re-steal against almost any player. Any pair, any suited ace, king, queen, king, jack, things like that would be fine. And some other hands as well. Here, this is a standard shove all day. This is close. I'm just going to fold it. The problem here is I'd like to 4x ISO over the limper, but the 4x commits us against 3 different players behind us. I mean, 10-9 suited's not really that strong. We could limp behind a limper, but for 100 chips, it's kind of a steep limp, and any of these players could shove, and we just have to fold. So it's kind of just a tough spot, and we'll just let it go. This is an easy shove with the King 10 suited, and we'll fold the 5-9. Would have loved to get involved here, but unfortunately, it just was a bad spot. Lay down the deuce 8. We've put ourselves in position to be the chip leader in this game. We will continue to lean on the other players as much as we can. Easy shove, easy call. Nothing wrong with either player's decision. Alright, this is an important spot. Most likely the short stack under the gun will just shove. But if he doesn't, we will be extremely aggressive with any other players. Now, if they just shove, we have to fold here. But if we get a limp, we're shoving any two. 1600 raise, I think fold is the right choice with. Don't even have odds here. Is the right choice with the deuce 4. Any raise that I think would have been non-committing, I actually would re-steal all in with nothing pretty much there. The problem with that raise is I don't think I'd ever see a fold very often at all. 10-8's a shove here for all day. I don't think I'd see a fold very often at all, and we're really just going all in. It's a complete bluff with pretty much no fold equity. If he had made it like 800, I probably would have made the re-steal. If he had limped, I would have shoved for sure. And again, pretty much regardless of what my hand was there. Just because of this one blind short stack. Excuse me. Alright, we are in the money in the top left. Fold the 8-4. This is a silly raise. I really don't know if we're ahead or not. If this player had shoved, we would have gotten involved. We're just going to go over the top of this. You should only be shoving or folding at 10 blinds or less. We're going to pay attention to see what kind of hands this player does with. Apparently, it doesn't really matter how strong their hand is. They're just going to raise and call no matter what, which means they should just be shoving to begin with. King Jack here is generally going to be ahead of any button range, and you can generally just shove over that. Definitely don't like that raise there. You should just get it all in. Would have been good enough to shove to with the jack 9. Easily a shove here. We'll shove over this limp, and we'll fold here. This is a little deep, but this player hasn't been, we haven't abused them yet. We don't really have any reason to believe they're trapping. They've shown a tendency to limp already at shorter stack sizes, so the weak ace there was good enough. Against some players you might want more, you might check behind. Here with the king 6 suited, easy shove. 8 blinds deep effectively, any suited king all day long is a shove. Heads up here. Ace 10, this is just an all-in. Normally you would make a small raise here and try to trap, but on the bubble, not being the short stack, we're not going to get cute, we're just going to get it all in. I have to call here based on odds. Somehow end up actually having the best hand. This is super tough. We'll re-stall in here. This is a really tough spot with the king jack. I'd recommend folding. We're not the short stack. This player limps a lot. It's really close. If you moved all in there, I wouldn't hate it at all. Flat calling is a mistake. If you're the shortest stack, I think moving all in is all day the right play. But being a medium stack like we are, and not really having a tremendous amount of fold equity, this player is also raising through short stacks. It looks fairly strong to me. I think letting it go is okay. Not a huge fan of it, though. I generally like to lean towards aggression, as you all know, at this point in the tournament. So I hate to fold there, but I do think it's the right play. Okay, looks like I was too late to register for that tournament. Here we're just going to let the ace-8 go. Get some more of these loaded up here. These games seem to load pretty fast is another thing great about Ultimate Poker, is being seven-handed, they just seem to constantly spring up. This is a spot that you could, well, let's look at this first. This is a fold because of this short stack. Raising into these players is not bad, but you know, I changed my mind on that. I'm actually going to make it 340 here. I haven't raised very much. We're happy to commit against this player. I haven't made many steals here. I think taking advantage of the spot is actually the right move. I changed my mind about that. If we had been more aggressive and this player had been calling more, we might just let that go. But make Queen 10 from the cutoff is a pretty easy raise, especially against the non-reg here. With this ace-8 that we had earlier after this limp, it wouldn't have been awful for you to shove over that either. I generally try to avoid the offsuit mid to ace rags. I like suited aces or decent aces instead. That's the most likely hand to get dominated, and so I'd like to take advantage of that spot, not too often. Easy shove with the pair into 5 players for less than 10 blinds. Fold to 10-7. Here you would shove. Pretty much any pair here would be a standard shove, in my opinion, to 5 players for 10 blinds or less, regardless of how loose they are. Let the 7-4 go. Shouldn't be limping here with anything. See how close. Looks like we have another game just about to pop up. Yeah, see, this is why you don't limp with hands at this point in the tournament. Even aces is not really worth trapping with on the bubble. Queen 5 here, we're going to make a go at it. Don't really like this, but this player is kind of a medium stack. He's going to want to have something here to call. He's not just going to call with random cards. Would be least inclined to shove on the big blind and don't want to just take our next random hand. Probably would have gone with this on the next hand as well, but now since we just shoved, we can get rid of the jack high. We're not in a super desperate spot anymore. Queen 10 is a fold this early on in this position. Let's rearrange these and get one more game going here. Ace 5 here is an easy shove for really just about 9 blinds effectively on the button. This is obviously an easy call with Ace King. We'll go with the 7-9 here as well. Even though this is into the big stack, we're still going to shove the 7-9. For those of you who look at like shoving situations like this, where we may end up getting eliminated, and thinking alternatively, well, we could have folded and survived. Well, that may be correct in that specific situation, but you really have to look at the long-term results of your decisions, and most of the time, blind versus blind, your Ace 5 is good the vast majority of the time. It actually even beats a fair number of hands in your opponent's calling ranges. King 10, any number of hands. There's really probably they're probably calling there with like 60% of the range. So you really beat a lot of the hands they're even calling with. If you're not shoving and getting it in bad here and there, then you're really just not shoving all in enough, and you'll find that passivity will cause you to bubble a lot. You have to be willing definitely to take risks to be able to survive and get in the money more often. I get a fair amount of fourth places because of my aggressiveness on that bubble, but I also get a lot of first places, and that more than compensates for the times that I'll go out because of those wide shoves. We've been being really aggressive on this table, so we'll pass up a few marginal opportunities against the big stack. Looks like this one's about to load up. It's a little bit later than I normally play right now, so it may be difficult to get too many games going here. It's okay to just fold the Queen Jack early on out of position here. We only want to take clearly profitable situations in the early blind levels. Easy shove with the Ace Queen. You'll also notice that, like, let's say this is folded to me, I'll just pitch this Jack 4. I would even maybe just fold like a Jack 7, maybe even a Jack 8 offsuit here. Not because it's not good enough to steal, but because I think it's of greater benefit to not steal this early on for 45 chips, but to, make it look like we're a tight player and then steal later on for more. My intention here is to check raise all in. We did let a card come off on the turn. Unfortunately, it was a spade. We can't let another turn or another card come off. We are fairly satisfied with our hand. I'm going to bet 2/3 here. We did get a call. We're obviously not wanting a spade on the river. We improved to a boat here. No reason to think we're not good. We're going to bet 650. I'm trying to get a call here. There are some hands that will call us that we beat. Looks like one of those did in fact call us. You could have bet a little more there, but I think 650 is a nice value bet to frequently get called. Here you can fold or call. I don't like ISO raising against a player with this stack size. It really lines up well for them post flop. We'll just get it all in here. We don't want to play risky. These guys are both really short in chips. We have 15 blinds almost exactly. This player can't call us very wide at all. If we make a small raise and he shoves, we have to fold. If he flats us, our hand doesn't play particularly well post-flop. So I think the best decision is just to try to get ahead in chips and just open shove that. We'll make a small raise here, and we'll be willing to fold to this player should he come over the top, which is not the case. Let's get one more game here, and then we'll call that good. Fold the 6-3. You can steal this Ace 4 here. You don't have to steal any ace from the cutoff in this level. On the next level, I certainly would. It's okay to, but you don't have to. I'd say like ace, deuce, and ace 3 are the only questionable ones. I generally raise ace 4 here against about anyone. You're never calling a 3-bet even though it's a small 3-bet. This is also a 3-bet that you guys should not be making. It doesn't really accomplish much. It got me to fold, but I would have folded to other 3-bets as well. I guess his intention might be to get me to come in with weaker hands against a strong hand, but it doesn't really affect my decision, honestly, when I see that. I don't look at the price and say, oh, let's call with my ace 3 and try to hit an ace, because I assume a lot of times that even when I hit my ace, it's not good. And so I'll just fold all the same. What it does give me is good odds with hands that I would flat call, and it allows me to trap him with hands like aces and kings, where I'll just flat that re-raise rather than go all in myself. We are in the money in the top left here. We will try to take this tournament down as well. Running decent so far. Some good luck, some bad luck. This is a raise. We don't really want to get involved with the big blind, but I mean, suited face card on the button, 3-handed, you're raising. And you're willing to call this shove. Obviously, you're committed. Would prefer to fold here, but we're okay calling this as well. Would have shoved into this player for 10 blinds, so obviously we'll be calling. Here from the cutoff, we'd fold. In like the 5100, you'd probably start a steal here. There against a reg, you would call this, believe it or not, and you would be ahead of their range. Against a non-reg, you would fold. We could still have the best hand. They could have queen jack, queen 10, things like that. But in general, we're only ahead of the very bottom of our random's range. Moving up to 200, 400 here, we'll be looking to still fairly liberally. This is potentially an any 2 spot. We've been aggressive with this player a few times, so we'll let this one go. I don't normally click auto fold, but in situations where you get a raise under the gun and we're in like a middle position, you're not really giving much away there, so it's okay. I would have shoved almost any 2 here. 8-7 certainly qualifies. About as good as we could hope for when being up against aces, really. And we did hit our hand. This would be a raise in the 25-50 or later, probably. We just shove the jacks over the limp. For 12 or 13 blinds, you can just shove it. If 14 blinds or so, you should be making an ISO raise. Call here with odds. Sevens, we can just make a small raise. At 15 blinds on the button, I think shoving is a little... I think it's a little overly aggressive. I think our hand is strong enough to withstand a little bit of pressure. If either of these players go all in, we're going to call. We won't always be ahead, but with 1.5 to 1 odds, I mean, you're calling here all day long. Fold the ace 3. Looks like we're destined to run into aces today. Easy shove with the king 9 suited. This is an easy shove as well. We would shove this through this player easily with this stack size, and then this player we're expecting to be committed here, but we're ahead of a random hand. One great thing about this aggressive style that I generally promote is that this is borderline, but it's okay. Is that when you play like this, you'll notice that I'm in position to get first a lot. Like I mentioned earlier, I often play through the bubble and come out of the bubble in first. I think the game is often won for the most part and on the bubble and three-handed. Your intention is to move into heads up with the lead. And if you have more chips than your opponent here and you're playing a heads-up aggressive Nash push-fold equilibrium, then you can afford to get it in behind here and there and still come out ahead. They have to suck out multiple times. Our opponent seems to be getting, aces and kings and queens here, and so it looks cute to limp and trap with these hands. But in general, this style of play does not work out well for you. I mean, you're only going to get aces or kings one time in 221, and you're generally only going to see maybe 20 hands in heads up before it's over. And so trying to limp with the intention of trapping when there's only a couple hands in the deck that are really strong enough to trap with is kind of foolish. It does work when you get those hands, but it isn't a strategy you should be playing with. This is actually kind of incredible, the number of times this player has had aces or kings in the last few hands. Okay, so it looks like we'll get second in that one. Fold here with the 10-4. We'll go ahead and finish these two up. This is close. You can come over the top here with a re-steal. Ace-8 is borderline. Against the cutoff raise, though, you expect to be ahead of that raising range a pretty significant amount of the time. Even when you're not, you have fold equity. I think some hands, like maybe Ace-9 here, might sometimes fold. Some hands you're beating will fold. You never want to be flat calling these raises, especially out of position with this stack size. Your really only maneuver is to fold or go all in with your hand, and so it makes the choice a lot easier. We're fairly even so far, so we'll look to try to get ahead on our session with these last two. King 10 is an easy raise, even from this position. My standard here is 2 1/4. Would make that raise with any hand I would play. Fold the 7-8. 7-8 suited here, you could consider stealing. This short stack and this short stack makes it a little more problematic, but it's okay. This is really aggressive. I do not recommend this for you guys. This is a raise that I make sometimes. This is pretty aggressive here from the hijack, and it's right after another raise. I think it looks super strong. I think only legitimate hands will come over the top, and so really I'm looking to spend 225 chips here to ask the question, did any of you wake up with a monster? And my question was answered. Sometimes you'll get away with that and sometimes you won't. We're going to wait just a second here to make it look like I'm thinking about it. I would make this raise with aces or kings or queens just the same. And so it doesn't really give anything away that I fold here. And I don't always even try to do that, but I actually think raising the hand right after I just raised one from an even earlier position, like I said, looks ultra strong. And so responses that come against you will most generally be legitimate. I actually don't know this player's shoving range that well. I think letting this go. I don't think we're behind by much, if we are at all. For 13 blinds, it seems a little steep when I'm not really that familiar with the player. There are a lot of regs there I would definitely call. This is an easy steal spot. Even from the cutoff would be okay. Probably King Jack there would be kind of an auto call, even against this player not really knowing what he shoves with. King I don't think King 10 would be bad. King 10 suited even probably would be a call. It's really hard to know in these situations. Like, it's a lot easier to know what to shove with rather than what to call shoves with, because it's really difficult to know a person's shove range. So we get quads up here. Well, we don't get them, but this is an easy shove if it's folded to us. The one thing I don't like about this is that the small blind's likely to get involved, and then they'll get to see what we're moving in with for 10 blinds pretty fearlessly. But I still think it's worth going for and accumulating a little more chips in the long run here. We do make a little bit of gain. Right now we had a first and a second, so we're 6 buy-ins up, and we've I think spent 8 buy-ins. So if I get second or better in either of these games, we're at least even. For those of you trying to develop kind of, for anyone who I think we're all susceptible to tilt. I think that's worth saying from the start. I think in any player, no matter how experienced, is susceptible to tilt. It's important to find out what kinds of tilt affect you, and in what way you're affected by it, so you can respond to it appropriately. For me, I don't really feel like looking at my results along the way any longer affects me. The decision that I made to deal with my tilt problems is I had a tendency, if I was way ahead or way behind, I would just end my session pretty abruptly. And then anywhere in the middle, I would continue playing, for however long I felt comfortable. I made a change ultimately to basically play for a certain amount of time no matter what. And I found that when I made that decision, even if I looked at my bankroll along the way, if I knew I had to finish my session to that length, that I would make good decisions. And I got in that habit, and I haven't really got out of it. And it's been really helpful for me. I don't know if it works for everyone. We all have to deal with things in different ways, but it did work for me pretty well. This is a good re-steal and a good call. Nothing wrong with either play here. We're just hoping, both of us hoping to win the flip. Looks like we were able to win this one. The 350 raise isn't really necessary from our opponent. He could have raised 2.5x and accomplished the same, and I would recommend making that smaller raise. It gives you more room to maneuver post-flop should you get called. With 9s there, you're pretty much going all in over the top with 20 blinds or less against any button raise. So I did what I had to do, and then his response to call was correct against my re-steal range. So pretty much automatic for both of us. Would have made a steal with the queen 9 had it been folded. We'll fold the 6 deuce. This is what you should be doing when players limp in front of you with these stack sizes. Well, with 14 blinds or less, you can just shove. This player would have been okay making like a 3.5x or 4x size raise. Don't need to shove with 20 blinds over a single limper. That's really not necessary. We'll just shove the ace-jack suited. Even though we have 12 blinds with a strong hand here, we don't want to make a small raise and get and play post-flop, possibly not hitting against these players on the bubble. Against a re-steal, though, we would be happy to call with the ace-jack. Hold the queen 6. This is close from the hijack. We have some chips to work with. I don't really like these players being short, but ace 5 is a legitimate hand in this blind level from the hijack, and we'll go ahead and make the steal. We'll fold to either of these re-steals, and we'll call either of these players is my intention. I expect that if either of these two would have shoved, though, they would be fairly even and maybe ahead of my range, but I would still have to call based on odds. Get rid of the 8-7. I do not like this spot. That said, I think we're ahead of this shove range. I think we're getting good odds here anyway, and I think our hand plays well against his projected range. I think we need to get involved here. We can't let this player just continue to steal and accumulate chips. Even if this player calls, we'd have to get third. This is pretty much where I expected him to be. I'm okay with this situation considering. Would have preferred to just shove myself, but I don't want to let this player shove and then me just fold my hand and him just continue to accumulate chips here. This is a tough spot. But with 5 blinds on the button, you could be pretty sure that this player would shove any pair, any ace, probably any king, any queen high, a lot of jack, suited connectors, things like that. So there's a lot of hands we beat or are fairly even with there that we're happy to call with. I think our odds were, I think there was, 1,200 in the pot, and it cost us 800 to call. So pretty good odds for us too there. Looks like we get some monster hands here, short-handed, as we have seen already this tournament, this set of tournaments. And we move into the money up here, hopefully on this other game as well. Easy shove here with the ace. Actually, shove the 5-7 suited too. They're getting good odds to call us, but it plays well against calling ranges, and sometimes people get folds. This is fine to call with the king 3. It is ahead of my projected range, so that's fine. Just unfortunate for him that I had something real this time. Our opponent is correct to call here with 10-8 offsuit, even not knowing what we have. The 4 blinds here, you should be moving in about 85% of hands, so this is fine to call, and it works out for him. We'll just let this go. We get third in this game. We'll open this one up a little bit here. Okay, we're moving into a position here on the bubble where we have the potential to gain a chip lead. So we're going to try to do that. It's kind of hard though, because any action against these 2 players commits us because of their stack size. So there's not a lot of stealing that we can do, but we'll try to take as much advantage as we can. This limp is just a bad play. There's no hand you should be limping with there against the player this short. Once you do limp, though, I agree with the lead out on the flop for half pot. I like that. Don't know what this player would be calling here that they wouldn't have committed with pre-flop, though. That's kind of unusual. This is why you don't get partially involved. You don't really know where you stand here. And I mean, now he has like 3.5 blinds, and he could have preserved his stack or just shoved pre-flop. Easy fold for us. Kind of moved out of position to take this chip lead though from that hand, so we'll kind of look to be a little more passive here. Limping here is pretty bad. Min raising over the limp is also pretty bad. Both these players should be putting all their chips in. These are silly bets. I mean, it's kind of discouraging even to watch players, make these decisions like this and basically just waste time. Alright, ace-7 here will be looking to get involved against either of these players. We'll fold against the raise and the shove. I was going to move all in over this raise myself, just to kind of give you an idea. 3-way all in with offsuit ace rag is not a good situation. But I would have shoved over this king 10 suited, and he may well have called me, but he would have actually been behind. And what's more is, I mean, why not just shove it anyway? I mean, once you make that small raise and a player shoves on you, and there's this short stack, you're, according to ICM, you're actually making a losing call, but you kind of force yourself into that situation, I guess. Looks like we move into the money on this one. So worst case scenario is we break even, but we'll be looking to move ahead here. Standard 450 raise for me in this blind level with the ace jack. We'll be calling any shoves. I will not be flat calling any raises, however. I will be shoving or folding in the face of a raise, or just making a small raise myself. When this player limps on my blind, I'll frequently shove over his limp. I won't let him get in with a lot of hands, but with 8-4, I don't think it's worth risking my whole stack to defend. I want him to feel comfortable limping so that I can get him to come in even wider and steal even wider. We'll shove over this limp. We only have about 14.5 blinds, perfectly standard to shove over one limp. Standard raise here. This does commit us against the big blind should he shove. Don't really like that, but it does do that, and it is good enough to commit against the player for 9 blinds. I like to limp at this stack size. I think raising, it's hard to c-bet without committing yourself. It's kind of awkward. I'm just going to lead out here for 250 and try to steal it cheap. If he comes back at me, I'm going to let it go. If I raise there pre-flop and he calls me and I c-bet, I put in like 40% of my stack and then have to give up the hand. It's really awkward to play it that way. I like to limp and then re-steal a lot of times when players raise, and then just fold the weaker hands like the one I held that time. This is unnecessarily big raise for this blind level. You don't really ever need to 3x it past the 25-50. We'll make this limp again. If this player raises, I'll shove. We're gonna do the same play we did last time. Just lead out here for men. If he did anything other than fold there, I would have given him action for sure. Just let go of the 4-3. It's worth noting that this player is also pre-selecting his check when I limp in his blind pre-flop, and so he's giving a lot of information away about the strength of his hand, and so when an ace comes on the flop, it's hard to believe he has one. I'm going to let this one go. Wouldn't be bad to limp here, but it's not really particularly good either. It's probably pretty break even with a hand like this, three-handed. Easy raise here. We have a gut shot, but there's a flush draw, and we didn't hit anything here. We're just going to let it go. If he had checked it, we would have checked behind. If he checked to us to get on the turn, I might have made some kind of steal bet, but I wasn't really looking to put any more chips in the pot there. Let the 3-7 go. This is a lot of limping from this player, less than 10 blinds. Clearly not a strong player here. Then flat calling this raise, and I mean, you're committed, you know. I mean, you already put half your stack in. I don't see how a player can fold at that point. This is problematic because we don't really want to get called here and have this player fold out. But with half the stack already in the pot here, I don't see this player folding too often. But clearly it is possible. It just happened. But you should never, when you have a third of your stack in pre-flop with the blinds, and you should almost never ever fold when a player shoves. We'll just hope to check this down. I'm just gonna let this go. I think we can find a better spot. This is one of those rare circumstances when I'm just gonna call here, because this player is passive and he likes to just call too, and I think that we're more likely to eliminate this player in this situation. I'm gonna check this one more time. And we're gonna bet 1,200 on the river, try to get some value. I don't know that we will, but we do. It's 2/3 pot bet, good amount of value. Our opponent would have probably called our all-in though, but it would have been hard to know that he had the last 3 in the deck there. So we're going to move into heads-up play here, which brings us to a profitable session, which is always a nice result. I consider any raise at less than 10 blinds and heads up essentially a shove until shown otherwise, and so I'm not calling that with deuce 10. We're just going to be shoving or folding at this stack size. I'm not going to be making these key raises like our opponent is. This is an easy call and an easy shove and heads up. Perfectly standard way for things to go down at this stack size. If things were reversed and I had the ace jack and he was choosing to call or fold with the queen 10, he would actually it would be a mistake for him to fold the queen 10. And if it's good enough to call a 10 blind shove, it's certainly good enough to shove with it yourself. So, alright, so it turns out being a profitable session overall. Hope you all enjoyed that. I will be coming out with further live videos soon from Ultimate Poker.